All right, people, we're jumping on with my good friend Andrew Hauser, and I think it's kind of like one of these timely conversations where whether you're a Blue Jays fan or a Dodgers fan, you're kind of wondering, okay, how's this going to go? And the thing I love about Andrew is that he was in the trenches. He's won a World Series. He's been around this sport for a while, and he can answer some of those questions. So I wanted to ask you, Andrew, first off, what 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 was it like when you guys made it to the World Series? Do things change? Does it get different? Do you change how you approach things, or is it just business as usual from a staffer's point of view and from the team point of view?
I'll tell you what, every round, the playoffs are dramatically different than the regular season. Like the game itself is totally different. Like every pitch is like everything's heightened. I actually had this conversation with a big league guy the other day that pitched recently in the World Series, and he equated it to, he's like, you go into like your major league debut, and as a pitcher, it's like you are so many nerves, like you feel like you're gonna vomit. He said but every playoff game is kind of like that. Like every game almost feels like your debut. Just again, everything's more heightened. Um, Interestingly, I always found the guys that were typically like truly ADD, ADHD players, that like had a therapeutic use exemption for like Adderall or Vyvanse or whatever it may be. Those are the guys that consistently like excel in the playoff atmosphere. So the guys that kind of come out of nowhere and you're like, man, this guy's just he just gets it done in the postseason. Those guys typically, it's like they're always looking for it's like that next level of stimulation. And the only time, like especially once they're a veteran, the only time they almost find that is the postseason. Um, but yeah, every round gets a little bit more intense. And I mean, there's a lot of money on the line as every round you go to. Um, for some players, I guess it's a lot. For staff, I mean, it can be life-changing money. But yeah, every round is different, and you only have, like there's no, in some instances, there's no tomorrow. So like the regular season, like when I got to LA, it was interesting because every day you kind of go in, you would just expect to win. There's a winning expectation. Um, and like so you never get rattled, anything. Everything's like pretty much business as usual. Which I'm watching the Dodgers right now, and they kind of look like that in the postseason too, which should be scary for other teams because again, it is teams that have been there just kind of know how to operate, know how to handle themselves. But it's like the scouting reports go to a totally different level. There's a lot more meetings. It's almost like now I've spent a lot of time around the NFL. They're like day before their games, and all week they have a lot of meetings. That's more what the playoffs are like with MLB. A lot more meetings. And just everything is getting broken down further and further and further. So the advanced scouting really starts to make a really big difference at that level. Like if you have any tips as a pitcher, those are going to get exposed greatly in the postseason. Those guys don't get very far. They Guys aren't going to be able to go as long. A lot of guys, and every team's different about this, but I mean, I know a lot of our guys, like we would go on doses of medication heading into the postseason. Um, just to try to feel right going in. There's different medications that are that are out there that I mean they're all above board. Um, but yeah, again, yeah, and especially when you have veteran teams, there's different layers to all of that.
And is it really about like do they try to exploit tendencies? Like are they just looking for any advantage possible?
Yeah, I mean it's the amount of film that's gone through. I mean, especially by if you have a good data department or like your advanced scouts. In LA it was different. Like we had, you have former players that were like special assistants or something that would then they would be around a lot more because there's certain things that they were good at as players too, that they bring in a different element of being able to disseminate information to athletes or to the players. That's really important. But it's velocity tends to tick up. Like it gives you it should give you an appreciation for the nervous system. Honestly, like you want to see a sympathetic stimulus. Like postseason, usually you see velo go up 1 to 2 miles an hour, which you see that's a hard thing even in the regular season when you're rehabbing somebody. Um, there's nothing that stimulates a major league environment like getting back in a major league environment because you get on the mound. Let's say you had a rehab assignment in A ball, guys throwing 88, but then he goes back on a major league mound 2 weeks later and he's throwing 94. Like there's an immediate just stimulus jump, and now you just extrapolate that when you get into the postseason. Um, guys that are pitchers that are very like, they hit their spots really well. Um, they might be a tick off just from, again, just that stimulus, their nervous system stimulus. Maybe their velo didn't spike, but they're amped up. There's no doubt about that. That conversation recently with a guy too that had been in the postseason. We're talking about a player that hadn't had a lot of success, been a good player for a while, pitcher, but yeah, like his velocity wouldn't change, but this guy really relied on like being able to locate really well. And again, you just take that stimulus, you amplify it a little bit, and now you miss by 2 inches. All of a sudden, you're throwing more pitches and you're going to get exposed. But even the mindset for like the relief pitchers coming in is totally different. I mean, uh, guys are way shorter leash at this point, so relief pitchers are going to come in earlier, and your high leverage guys more willing to walk a player than let them, than risk something and let them do damage to you. So um, you're going to see more strikeouts. I mean, that's why in general, you just see such low scoring games in the postseason too. I mean, once in a while, you'll see I think the Blue Jays beat one of the teams like 12-3 one night, but maybe that's the Yankees series. But I mean, that's far from the norm.
Yeah.
They're
Now, you've worked both in strength and conditioning and so the medical side, the rehab side. What when you enter this late in the postseason, what is the role of the strength and conditioning coach? Like, does he have a role?
just get people ready. uh, Help them get warm. And some guys they don't want to fall out of. I mean, baseball's such a big routine-oriented game, so guys will continue within their routines. Um, but yeah, I mean, especially by the time you get to the World Series, it's like it depends on what guys are working through. Like there's a lot of bumps and bruises at that point. Guys are playing through a lot more than they normally would. Certainly, like especially like in a place like LA where you're going to go to the playoff. You're not really fighting for a playoff spot. I mean, it's not a guarantee, but it's that in and of itself is a different mindset. I mean, if you have a 10-game lead in the division and your shortstop goes down, like, all right, like we don't need to rush this guy back. Where a lot of teams like, hey, you're fighting for a playoff spot, you might need to rush that player back. He may not be totally ready. LA, that's typically not going to be the case because you want that guy to be like, you don't want him to come in and not be in a spot where it's like he hasn't seen competition in a while. So he needs to come back in time to start getting ready for that. But he's getting ready for the postseason. So it is that in and of itself is a different mindset. So on the strength side, it really depends what guys are working through. The medical side, I mean, it's truly on all hands on deck. So if you have any doctors are around a lot more, because in baseball you have a like a primary care physician and an orthopedic physician at every game, but like the teams providing those, the home team, and like so those are covering both sides.
Mm.
Now the playoffs, you travel with your own as well. So that in and of itself is different, and I mean they're just there for a lot more. So again, there ends up being more medications and whatnot on that in that respect. But yeah, I mean you're doing whatever you can, however long it takes um, in, in the postseason. I mean, I remember 2020, I mean, we had a guy had never sprained his ankle before, and we were in Texas, and there it goes from turf to dirt, and he was like chasing a fly ball. And this isn't like an important a guy that played a lot of positions for us. Hits the lip, feels a pop. Um, I mean, he played the next game. Like ankle was huge, but it's like you're kind of pulling out all the stops, both from what's in your skill set, what the guy can handle, and then what he can tolerate once he's on the field. So it's that's not going to hurt the team too. Like I mean, if you're going to hurt the team, we can't put you out there. But if you can get out there and be somewhat yourself, you're going to go.
Yeah, like in the case of Springer getting hit by that pitch on the knee, that type of contusion, is that
Yeah.
something that's pretty manageable from your point of view?
I imagine that probably swelled up decently.
Yeah.
Like I have an idea what they did. I have an idea what he probably what the doctors gave him too. I mean, honestly, at that point, it's kind of treating him like it's Sunday in the NFL. Like
Yeah.
there's certain things that, you're not going to do that. You can't do that in a baseball season like every day. It's not healthy, but like now we're in a little different position. And now he's had what 3, 4 days to try to get that under control. It probably still doesn't feel great.
Yeah.
But yeah, your regular season, you're going to sit on that, three, depending on and that depends on your bench situation. Like a major league in the season, he's not playing the next game for sure, unless it's like coming down to a wire for a playoff spot. Might be an IL situation, or I mean, again, you have to look like where you're at in the standings, what your bench looks like how long can you have to make that decision of how long can I sit on this guy, like not play him without hurting the rest of the team, which tends to be a little, if it's not a catcher, it tends to be a little easier with a position player,
Mhm.
unless somebody else gets hurt. Pitchers are a little trickier, especially if your bullpen's been getting called upon a lot. And I think that's like you have so many of these clubs with uh, the Brewers were a really good example. Like that's a team that has a lot of bullpen games. They really rely on their bullpen. So yeah, one of those guys is banged up in the playoffs or in the regular season, you're going to handle those situations differently.
Yeah, and if you're working on the rehab side, what is that fine line between like, okay, there's an injury we're rehabbing, but also you're working the other side of like, I need to make sure that each player has enough recovery or recovery modalities to make sure we don't dip into that injury side. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Because I mean, we teach a course in recovery and we're constantly talking about this stuff, but what are some of the things you're doing, say, from a recovery side so that doesn't dip into the tendon problem or ligament problem or muscular problem?
I mean, I could tell you like now, one thing I know I would do differently than even before, like, man, I would utilize the pool so much in the postseason. Just from like a systemic recovery perspective alone, I think that would make such an immense impact, and especially in the postseason where you are like, again, these guys are playing through stuff a lot more. Um, I think, and like the pool, like, hey, if I can increase stroke volume of a heart, if I could just like unload this guy, if I can get his joints pumping fluid better, if I can just take advantage of their physiology to help their body choose a better decision, then you're in a better spot. But I mean, you have again in the postseason, it's like you're sending guys back to the hotel with everything. Like you're in, and we did at that point. We had a training room also. Like I mean, you're at the park from 12 to 12 consistently every day. Um, but I mean, you have stuff going on in the mornings in some instances. You have stuff back at the hotel, so you just have um, constant attention to like whatever you can do from a recovery perspective. Yeah, I mean, you're pulling out all the stops, everything out of your hat. But like, yeah, at this point, like I could tell you 2020, like man, we're using a lot of like electrical stem in different ways. I mean, we were using a lot of tub stuff. We were using a lot of blood flow restriction. There's a number of different modalities that we used quite a bit. Um, uh, man, I mean, we were, we had one, I remember we had one guy that did have he had a bad groin strain. And I want to say that was the division series that year. So a lot of like going through the postseason was just trying to get him back in case we were in the World Series. And then he came back and he did play in the World Series. Um, that's not something he would have come back that early from.
Hmm.
It's usually like a soft tissue injury in baseball, you're looking at a grade one situations, usually 3 to 4 weeks. 4 weeks, pretty consistent. And it's, this is where I think it's like different than the track world. You're bringing a guy back to, to race. Like you have so many at bats to get in. You have, just being on their feet again for like 9 innings is a different kind of grind for players. And I think that's part of why you see so many injuries early in the season, in a baseball season as well. Um, Guys a lot of times don't ever even play 9 innings in spring training. So, um, but yeah, I mean, do a fair amount of isometric work. There's a lot of things physiologically, even now, like there are things where I think we could have like in just experientially now over the last 3, 4 years that I've kind of changed my tune on that I think we could have catapulted their turnaround time. But it's they got to sleep too. I mean, that's the cheapest modality we have, which which is a challenge in the postseason. Again, you have that heightened nervous system. You're not a player, a pitcher I used to work with that referred to himself as an agent of chaos. Um, but that's kind of what the playoffs are. You
Hmm.
have you're flying all over the country, potentially. Like 2019, I think we were in the division series and we're going back and forth. That's a 5 game series, but we're still back and forth between LA and Washington, DC. So you're making
Hmm.
long flights. Game times are always changing and they're always dependent upon TV. So there's not the same kind of routine there is that you can get into in the regular season. So it's just a lot more like red eye. You have your red eye flights. And you're like, oh man, it playoffs are tough. That's
So
one of the
a,
one things I miss about the team sport though, too. It's just
a
totally.
Seattle LA series would have been a lot easier for both teams, eh?
Yes. No, this is perfect because now they're all going to be crushed.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask you specifically about the Otani situation. If he's pitching and hitting, are the demands are different for him than anybody else? And how many games would he possibly play if it goes like 7 games? Like, is he playing 2 games, pitching 2 games,
I think
maybe?
I bet he'll start. This is my guess. Like he'll probably start game four for them because they'll probably go. I think they already announced they'll go Snell and Yamamoto game one and two. I would imagine Glass now goes three, and Otani's four. So then that lines him up by if it has to go 7 games, again, that's all hands on deck. But even if it doesn't at that point, like if it's in game six and they have a chance to clinch, like he could go in.
Okay.
And that is the thing that starts to change in the playoffs. Like let's say it's a guy's what normal a day he would normally maybe throw a bullpen on. He's not going to throw a bullpen necessarily in the postseason because hey, if we need an inning, can you give us an inning?
Hmm.
So we I know we had to do that in 21 division series, and we had a guy come in and pitch what would be his normal bullpen day, and he threw 1 inning for us in the game, but like he was a starting pitcher. I could definitely see that out of a team like LA because right now their their Achilles heel during the regular season was their bullpen. So now it's been better, but their starting pitchers have gone longer. So uh, if you can throw in Otani throwing 100, yeah, you might take your chances on that. If it's a potential to clinch the World Series or take a game, because like you don't want to, the regular season you can punt and you live to see another day. You're not typically unless you're up 3 games to none, you're not really trying, you don't want to have to do that in the World Series. Like that's not a good place to be.
And would you say there's like a wear and tear component that affects his batting or not really? He's just,
I I think at this point, when you know you have like, 7 games at most left in the season, like I think the nervous stimulus is so high, I don't think it would affect it.
mm,
Now, probably as soon as the World Series ends, everybody's going to get sick and feel terrible, but and that's typically what happens. Everybody just feels like awful after like the first 3 weeks of the off season. A lot of guys get sick, and it's such like a letdown, like nervous system letdown. It's like your immune system can't keep up. It's just so shot. And some of that is even if you don't go to the postseason, like from all like how bad the travel just beats you down. So the wear and tear of the season. And the wear and tear, like for me being in Los Angeles, that was a big change going to from Atlanta. Is you just have so many more teams on the west or on the East Coast than the West Coast. I mean, you have to if you go outside your division in Los Angeles, it's 3+ hours every time.
yeah.
It's easy if you're playing the Padres or the Giants, but as soon as you go, you have to make a West Coast trip. I mean, that's a 5 hour flight. I saw some actually pretty major changes in
Yeah.
like muscle oxygen, which definitely matters in this World Series. And they have a travel day. You go two games, travel day, then they'll have three in LA, then they'll have a travel day if it needs to go.
Yeah.
But what I found was like flights that typically went over an hour and a half. And so every half hour or more, like it mattered. You would see a decrease in total hemoglobin. You would see a decrease in carbon dioxide, and then you'd also see an increase in just resting glucose. Um, if anybody has an omega wave, like you would see their HRV scores would not be good. Like you would see a decrease in their DC potential of their brain. Yeah, it almost like the Moxie stuff almost looked like they're hyperventilating, but this would be in a leg. So it's like a local hyperventilation. It looks similar after like a grade 1 muscle injury, like muscle strain.
Wow.
So yeah, it's like they have all the oxygen in the world to use, but they don't have the necessary components to use it. So it starts to change your thoughts on, okay, well, what do I need to do after a flight then to prepare for for the game?
So in your opinion, does Toronto have an advantage, starting at home?
I think starting at home, they have an advantage those first 2 games. Once you get to, game 3 in LA, it's like all bets are off. So I think they have to try to take advantage of those first 2 games because, you know, they were they're kind of rolling right now for one. LA already has more days off, which if you're banged up, it's one thing, but like baseball plays every day. That's why like teams are usually sluggish after the All-Star break. And in a lot of teams with the days off, not with the first round buys, those teams, I think until last year, struggled with the first round bye.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's you play every day. It's one thing having a day here and there, but it's a total other thing when you have 4 or 5 days off. So LA is dealing with that plus the travel. So Toronto they have to take advantage of they have to try to take advantage of that. Um, it's going to be, I mean, I think it'll be a good World Series. LA is just so good. So good.
Does Toronto have any chance? What's your prediction here?
Uh, I think LA is going to win. But I think they're more equipped than like the Yankees were last year, to be honest.
Okay.
Um, they can run pretty well, and and they have a couple of their best hitters are rolling at the moment. So I think how you can beat LA, you have to get to their bullpen. So you have to get through get their starting pitchers out of there relatively quickly. And I look at the Dodgers and the Phillies the same from this perspective. Like when you have a lot of power in your lineup, you're usually giving something up defensively to to have that. And so those teams, you put pressure on them by like running and like being super aggressive on the bases. So I thought Milwaukee could do that, but they couldn't do enough with their starting pitching. Um, but I think Toronto's got a good blend of being able to do that. And so I think that'll be an interesting component that they haven't had to deal with, at least in the postseason so far. I mean, up to this point, LA's Philly was gave them some good games, but I mean they just walked through the championship series. Um, yeah, that's going to be. But I do think, yeah, I think Toronto's got a chance, and they've got a couple starting pitchers there that are really good. I've had a couple of them. If they can if they throw well their first time through, all bets are off. Anything can happen this time of year, which is the exciting part.
Nice. Well, I really appreciate your insights because I think that's what people want to know is like you see what, you see what you see, but what is the inside story and what's going to make a difference? It's always nice to have that information and it's not as easy as it may look.
No, and like I said, the schedule changes. Like there's just so many more meetings than than you have other times of the year. Um, so it's like they do have an increased cognitive load on everything. So it's like, okay. And this is a whole other level of training that we haven't talked a lot about, but like those create certain like a cognitive demand aside from the game itself creates such a large um, response systemically. And that's something I think that's not looked at from a training perspective often enough. Because those are creating a lot of the same things, a lot of what maybe, hey, we're gonna go do 10 by 10 Excels, like you're expecting a certain physiological response from
Hmm.
that. Like the acute response, rep to rep. You're creating that a lot of times just with the cognitive demand without doing anything actively. So like these guys are pretty much running in a like uh, they're they're burning through their reserves at this point. So from a metabolic perspective, they're just burning through a totally different like their nutritional demands. This would be an interest. Like nobody will probably ever be able to do this study, but even if you had like a glucose monitor on them during the World Series, their nutritional demands would be through the roof. Like far, nobody thinks about the cognitive demand of baseball and them having big nutritional demands because they're standing around so much. Uh, but I bet it's like sky high.
And it must disturb their sleep. If you have this, this
Um,
extra input and the stress caused by it, you got to be lying awake at night.
you take even if you take away the video game play that happens after games, like you have, I mean, most guys have probably fallen asleep 3, 4 in the morning a lot of times. And I do think that's why guys self-medicate. Uh, not nearly as many guys drink alcohol at this point, but whatever else they do. But to me, like I look at it now, like they're just trying to come down from the game more than anything because they're not going out and partying or especially during the postseason. They're not doing that. They're just trying to come down so they can like relax and then hopefully fall asleep before. If they can fall asleep by 2, sometimes that's a win. Yeah, especially in the postseason. Now you
Well,
add what happens with the flights. The flights take a bigger toll than I think people realize. And like even aside from the time zone changes, and that was just what I was seeing with like the CO2 and the hemoglobin and everything. Like that's a major factor that's not really being addressed or even looked at.
yeah. So if you had to do it all over again, you would have a significantly different approach.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I would just leverage different like, hey, we're gonna, get off the flight and do certain things like whatever's realistic for what time you're getting in, of course, because that matters. Um, and like and the modalities like in flight and when you land, like there's things you can do to start to mitigate that. that yeah, I would at this point. I would do some things differently. Like I was seeing it then, but now I just have a smoother thought process of like, okay, like here's what we need to do to really address that. Um, and leverage our own physiology to take advantage of it. Because the other team's not doing that stuff either.
Definitely, definitely. Well, thanks a lot again, Andrew. I look forward to watching the series now that I have this information. Yeah, I'd like to see where it goes, but yeah, we might do a follow up with you later.
I love it. All right, man.
Thank you.